Alright, good afternoon, third year. I am sorry I can't be there with you today. Hopefully, I will be with you on Friday. What we're going to do today is a little bit of prep work for Friday. I'll get you thinking about um, kind of the different ideas we're going to look at for Friday. So what we're going to look at today is going to be representation. Now we're going to look at representation in terms of Black Panther, so that on Friday when I'm there, hopefully, and it is hopefully, we'll be able to look at it in terms of Moana. Okay. So this is kind of us just getting the ball rolling a wee bit, getting you guys thinking about representation before we move forwards. Can I just say, I don't know, I think I already have, but I hope you're all doing well. I hope you all had a good weekend. And yeah, hopefully this lesson done digitally will still work. But who knows? Also, thank you to whoever's taking the class. I really appreciate that. It's always a pain. So thank you very much. Um, can you take out your jotters? Can you take a wee heading of representation in the Black Panther? It's not the Black. Is it the Black Panther? I think it's just Black Panther. I'm gonna get rid of the representation in Black Panther. Um, you don't need to copy down your learning intention success criteria, but while you are taking out your jotters and getting that written down, I will run through the learning intention success criteria. So your learning intention is that you will learn how the key characters in Black Panther are represented and why they're represented in that way. They are represented in a very specific and deliberate way. And we're going to look at how that comes about and why it's done in that particular manner. Your success criteria is that you should be able to apply your pre-existing knowledge about representation to Black Panther to better understand the characters in that movie. Certainly by the end of this, that's what you should be able to do. Okay. So, what I want you to do, this is a quick starter. Um, oh, sorry. If you haven't got your jotter out, hurry up. Grab a pen, grab a pencil, take the heading of representation in Black Panther, and if whoever's taking the class could just pause this video until everybody is set up, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Okay. So, quick starter is just take 45 seconds. We have talked about representation. We've talked about what it is, what it means. We've even talked about why it's important. 45 seconds, I want you to chat with the person sitting next to you. And after you have chatted for those 45 seconds about what representation is, don't just chat. This isn't just a conversation opportunity. Take 30 seconds and write down what you think representation is. Okay? So have a bit of a back and forth. Try and remember, what do you think representation is in a media term. Your teacher can ask for feedback or not as they see fit, but your answer should be good enough that even though you probably do not have a media teacher in front of you, they should understand by the time you're done explaining what representation is. If you could pause the video, that would be amazing, and just give them a wee minute and a half to do this. Thank you. Alright, brilliant. Anything in bold just now, or anything I tell you to, I want you to copy down. Representation refers to how media texts represent or portray people, places, events, or ideas. Right? It's important to note that it's not just about how people are portrayed. It can be specific places. If you have seen Still Game, it gives a very specific representation of Glasgow, specifically the Maryhill area of Glasgow. If you have watched movies like Dunkirk, it gives a very specific representation of war. Right? If you have watched movies, Hacksaw Ridge, I'm on a war theme apparently, it gives a very specific representation of kind of American military values and of pacifism. So it's about how anything is portrayed and represented in the media. Right? So it's very broad. We will tend to apply it to people and to kind of, now that's not people necessarily specifically, it can be, but when we talk about people, we'll talk about people in a more general sense, groups of people, particular races or religions, genders, sexualities, ages, things like that. Okay, that's what we'll be more interested in. And what we'll be looking at is, if we're looking at a group of people, do this group of people conform to stereotypes or not? Okay, if you're watching a movie set in America, um, are there being stereotypes perpetuated? Do you have a lot of Latin American kind of people who are being portrayed as immigrants, illegal, or poor at English? Do you have a lot of African Americans who are being portrayed as kind of criminals or dangerous elements? Do you have like kind of so on and so forth? Um, do these people conform to stereotypes, which is never a good thing, or are they being used to challenge stereotypes? Okay, um, if you look at older pieces of media, women in the media tend to be, and this is a very very broad generalisation, but women in the media would have tended to have been kind of wives, secretaries, nurses, homemakers, quite domestic roles, quite safe roles. They wouldn't necessarily be leaders or heroes or bosses or CEOs, despite the fact that for a long time in industry and business and things like that, women have had these kind of roles. Um, so, do these people conform to stereotypes or not? Okay, how are they being portrayed? How does that hurt the image of these people, or how does it maybe help and bolster it? Are these people being portrayed as strong or weak, and how do you know? Okay, that tends to be pretty easy to tell, although it can be quite a complex question. If you watched a movie like Black Klansman, I don't know if anyone will have seen it. It's an excellent movie. I think it's currently on Netflix, but check the age rating if you do decide to watch it. Um, in Black Klansman, you have black people are portrayed simultaneously as incredibly strong, and maybe weak's not the right word, but powerless as well. They are very much at the will of the predominantly white kind of governance, police, and populace, which means that they are constantly having their rights kind of crushed under the heel of the white kind of patriarch. But at the same time, they never let it beat them. They are constantly fighting back. They are constantly trying to rise above this racism and trying to fix the society in which they live. So you have this very interesting dynamic where they're portrayed as very strong despite having very little power. Um, and you'd have to talk about things like narrative when you're looking at that. Okay, how do these people act? How does their story play out? And how does that help us understand their portrayal in this particular piece of media? Is someone good or evil, and what suggests this about them? If I was to, and we will actually wind up doing this a wee bit further down the line, but if I was to show you pictures of Disney villains, very few Disney villains need more than a picture to be like, oh, they're the baddie. If you think about Dr. Facilier and the Princess and the Frog, there's a skull painted on his face for good chunks of the movie. If you think about the Wicked Witch in Snow White, she's either kind of dressed all in kind of like black with kind of extreme features, or she's a kind of gnarled old crone cackling and missing teeth. But it's very easy to represent people as evil, especially if you conform to stereotypes. And stereotypes tell us that anyone who's different is evil. And again, we'll look at that a wee bit further down the line. So that's what representation is. Sorry, that was a wee bit of a spiel. I'm probably got bored within about 12 seconds, but there you go. I'm not there, so you can't stop me. Um, when we're looking at representation in Black Panther, it's really important. Black Panther has a huge deal of representation. What we're going to do is we're going to quickly analyse a few of the main characters and see how representation works in this movie. We're specifically going to focus on T'Challa because he's the main character. While we're doing this, I want you to think about the following question. So, all the way through this PowerPoint, and we'll come back to it at the end, I want you to think about why representation might be more important in a superhero movie than perhaps it is anywhere else. Why is it particularly important to represent people with accuracy in a superhero movie? So there's going to be two slides coming up. What I want you to do is note down three different things that you notice about how the character, T'Challa, is being represented. So in both of them, he is the same person. He is T'Challa. But in both of them, he's being represented in very different ways. I want you to focus on the mise en scène. So, and we'll come to what mise en scène is in a minute. His expression, his stance. You can also comment on what you remember about the character's actions in that given scene. So if you, the second one's actually from a poster, so you won't have any actions. But from the first one, you can think about things that he said, how he acted, who he was surrounded by, and what that tells us about his character. Very quickly, again, take 30 seconds, discuss with your partner what is mise en scène. Right, you don't have to write it down, but I do want you to be prepared to feed back with an answer so that your teacher, whoever is taking the class, thank you again, can make sure that you understand. Okay. Hopefully you had a wee bit of time to chat about mise en scène. If you haven't, just give it a quick pause. But mise en scène, something we have talked about quite a bit, specifically when we're looking at language. Mise en scène is anything that is deliberately put on the stage to influence our understanding of what's going on. It includes, but is not limited to, costumes, makeup, props, and lighting. Okay, these are going to be the main ones that we'll look at, though. All right. So this is the first still that we're going to look at. I want you to jot down just as many things as you can about how T'Challa is being represented here. All right, like it will take you a few minutes, a good 2-3 minutes at least. I want you to jot down things about maybe his stance, i.e., his pose, how he's sitting, where he's sitting, what he's wearing, his facial expressions, the importance of the color in this scene, right? Anything like that. Before, if this has already been paused, don't worry. Before it's paused, we will have a quick look at these are the things I want you to consider. Okay, how is T'Challa being represented in that still? What's he wearing? Why is it important? This is a really important question to answer. You have to link back to why is this relevant. Saying, oh, he's wearing a fancy black top. Okay, what's relevant about that? What's relevant about the fact that it looks quite nice and ornate and fancy? What's relevant about the colour? Why does this matter? You always have to link it back to why. What kind of facial expression does he have? And why? What's he doing here? And why? Right? That's kind of more linked to your understanding of the film and memory of it. We watched that a while ago, so if you don't get that one, that's grand. You can focus on these two. Right. So, if you could pause it here just for a couple of minutes, I want everyone to jot down how T'Challa is being represented. If this is all you saw of this movie, with this one still, what could you assume about this character based on what you can see in this image? Hopefully, the kind of things that you were coming up with just now are the. Do I want to tell you just now? No, we'll move on to the second one. We're going to do the exact same thing again. Okay. But this time, we're going to do it for this one. Okay. Now, I don't know if this is a real poster. It looks kind of dodgy to me, but it kind of did everything that I wanted. I don't know how good the lighting is with you guys just now. If the curtains are open, it would be fantastic. If they could be closed, I would certainly greatly appreciate that, so that you can see this a wee bit better. But here we have a very different picture. Okay. Again, I want you to think about what's he wearing? What facial expression does he have on? Why is this relevant? And I am sticking with that question, and I want you to explain why it's a stupid question and then explain why it's relevant anyway. And again, what's he doing here? You might not know it from the movie, but you can tell it from his body language, his pose, and his stance. Right? So, again, if you knew nothing about this movie and this is all you saw, what could you tell me about this character? How would you know? Think about what he's wearing. Think about the background, okay, the backdrop and what you can see. Think about kind of what he's wearing, what it looks like. His clothes and the backdrop are kind of the two main things you've got here, but you're also going to think about colour. And again, if whoever's taking the class can pause this just so that they can take a wee couple of minutes to jot down how this element of T'Challa is being represented. Thank you. Okay, now I'm not there to find out what you are kind of hitting on, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run you through the things you should have identified, and then we'll have a think about the similarities and why they're important. So in here you have predominant kind of element of the costume is black. It's predominantly black, and the importance of that is this is Black Panther, a movie about kind of black strength in a world which is phenomenally racist. Now, although T'Challa and Wakanda and the Black Panther are fictional, the world in which they are set really isn't. The issues that they talk about, the issues that pertain to Black Lives Matter, the issues of black people being overly policed and incarcerated, and being treated as second class citizens all around the world, they very much exist. So this representation of kind of a very very powerful, very very positive black role model in the world is really important, and the black costume helps with that. Black is obviously like black rights, black heritage is a key theme in this movie, and so that's what this is doing. It's helping to emphasize that. Okay, is taking the color black, a color that we often have quite negative connotations with. Okay, you often associate the color black with despair, darkness, and kind of some element of danger, and it's giving a very positive spin on it, and that's really important. So you hopefully hit on the colour black. Then we're looking at things like the very detailed embroidery around here. It's very fancy, it's very ornate. It maybe suggests someone of wealth. You've got the ring on the finger, which suggests that as well. He's well kept, kind of. He looks very smart. All of this suggests someone of wealth. And then you can look at the seat, which suggests maybe a throne. So we've got wealth, power, and a deliberate nod towards strong black characters, and maybe even strong black role models. This one is very, very similar. Okay, the costume is predominantly black. It's doing everything left on this strong black connections. The lines going over it are purple. I don't know if anybody remembered when we were chatting about the color purple what it represents, but it's royalty. Okay, the color color purple, words are tough today, represents royalty. So you're maybe looking at someone of again power and royalty. But then you've got the claws, which are weapons. You've got the mask, which houses identity. We're getting nods towards superhero here as well. The tech element of the suit nodding towards superhero as well. And one of the things I wanted you to focus on was facial expression in both of these. Serious guy, all right, and realistically, that's all you have to say. He's being represented as quite a serious guy here. You've got the slight frown, no smile, slightly flared nostrils. He's been taken aback by the arrival of Killmonger. He is slightly on the defensive, as you can see from this facial expression, and he's quite serious. No facial expression. Hopefully nobody was like, he's laughing. There's no facial expression here. You can't see it because he's wearing a mask. Now that's relevant, that's incredibly important. Why do we wear a mask? Well, in today's society we wear a mask for a very different reason. But back then, in the good old days before coronavirus, we wore masks if you wanted to conceal your identity. If you were going to rob a bank, or if you were going to be a superhero. That's why you would wear a mask. It was to conceal your identity. So that's another nod towards him being represented as a superhero. Right? The background represents more about his kind of living situation. Maybe lives in a very high tech place. You might, if you've never seen the movie before, you might think it's the future, which would be valid. Instead, it's just a slightly different version of the Earth that we live in today. So how's the T'Challa Panther represented? We've gone through that now. So, what I want you to think about is what are the differences between these two representations and why are they important? Think about the mask, think about the claws. Whereas you've got stern facial expression and nice hands. I'm tired, I apologise. Alright, so why are these differences put in? And then think about the similarities as well. The colour predominantly. Why is that kept in? Right. Have a wee think about that. Maybe chat with the person sitting next to you and jot down why is the colour black still predominant in both of them, but why is it also relevant that he is basically armed here and his face is covered. Can whoever's taking the class quick pause and give them a wee 3 minutes to jot that down. Thank you. Alright. No, just do it. No, that's a new one. There we go. Oh, that's something else. So, when you're looking at it, what you've hopefully hit on is that colour black, it doesn't matter if he is the Black Panther or if he's T'Challa, King of Wakanda, or when he was T'Challa, Prince of Wakanda. He is always representing his community. Okay, in the film, that community is Wakanda, which is a black community, so the black makes sense. But on a greater scale, in our understanding of the movie, not as a story but as a representation of black people, it's really important that this color black is kind of showcased. If this suit was pink, it would look ridiculous and you wouldn't be able to sneak anywhere. But also, it wouldn't carry that same weight with kind of black power. If he was wearing a green suit here, or if he was even just wearing a purple suit here, I'm sure he'd look resplendent, but it wouldn't be trying to empower black people and to give a sense of authority and kind of dignity to that colour that has maybe been hasn't been given before. The differences are hopefully more straightforward than that. Okay, we'll talk more about society. It's a bit more complex. I don't want to do too much on it just now. Here he's a superhero. He has to fight people. He is in combat, so he needs weapons. Claws. Here he is a superhero. He has to fight people. He doesn't want people to know who he is. He wears a mask. People know he's the king. No one's going up to him going, "Oh my God, that's T'Challa. I wasn't expecting him." They know T'Challa is the king. All right, hiding his identity there would be redundant. And he's not expecting to be attacked in his throne room, so he doesn't need his claws. Just his fabulous hands. So, the reason we're doing this is because, personally, it gives you a really good understanding of representation and how representation can apply to different characters, even if they're actually the same person. But secondly, it's going to allow me to talk to you about a persona. Now, a persona is the aspect of someone's character that is presented to or perceived by others. It may be a role or character that they adopt that is not themselves. Okay? I want you to copy that down. And in fact, I'm going to give you a minute to copy that down before I start kind of jabbering on about why I'm teaching you. So if whoever's taking the class, can you give it a quick pause and then let me know. All right. So, what am I talking about? Persona. Sorry, apparently I spaced out there and forgot everything. Personas are really commonplace. I generally like to have a bit of a back and forth about where you might see personas, but hopefully you would be able to think that up pretty quickly. If you think about your, I mean, I'm sure it probably applies to you yourselves, but we won't open that door. If you think about your teachers uh, standing in front of you in a classroom, teaching you, don't think, think about your more uh, traditional teachers, your teachers who, uh, are maybe slightly more strict or maybe slightly have, engage more with classroom rules and things like that. Do you think these teachers are exactly the same when they go home? Do you think with their friends and their family and their loved ones, the people they've known all their lives, do you think they conduct themselves in the exact same way? And the answer is obviously no. All right. When I'm at home, I don't ask for silence by putting up my hand and going 3, 2, 1. It would get me kicked by my wife. All right, she wouldn't stand for that because in home it's ridiculous. I very much have a persona in school that I put on. It's not a huge persona. I like to think I'm very much mostly myself, but when I'm at home, I am a different person. And then if I was to go out onto the rugby pitch, which I will not be doing anytime soon. But if I were, I've got a very different persona for the rugby pitch as well. You conduct yourself in different ways depending on the scenario that you're in. You put forward different personas. It's like a mask that you wear. Ooh, a mask, you say? Yes, a mask. It's like a mask that you wear. Okay. If you're going for a job interview, you're not going to act the same way as if you were just sitting chatting with your mates. If you were sitting chatting with your mates, you're not going to act the same way as if you were sitting and chatting to your granny. If you're sitting and chatting to your granny, you're not going to act the same way as if you're sitting and talking to the police. Okay? You put on a persona, you respond to the situation in front of you. Now, these are all day to day examples. Okay? Different people wear personas all the time. Um, you I I would bet money on the fact that all of you have different personas for different friends and friend groups. All right, I would put money on that because we do. We conduct ourselves differently depending on how we want people to perceive us and how we think people expect to perceive us. Okay. Now, why is this relevant to Black Panther and indeed superhero movies as a whole? I'm just going to kind of go on. I think you're kind of seeing where I'm going with this. Superhero movies, on the most part, focus on a character leading a double life. One life is themselves, and that should be in inverted commas. Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, Peter Parker, Laurel Lance, right? And one life as their superhero persona: Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Black Canary. Now, it's quite an interesting question, and it's one of these questions that you can go back and forth on in quite an interesting way. How do you know which one's the real person and which one's the persona? If you've seen Christopher Nolan's Batman, he challenges that. Is Bruce Wayne, the billionaire playboy, the real person, or is he just the face, the mask, the facade to cover up the real person who is the symbol of the Batman? Is Clark Kent the real person, or is Superman the real person? Is Peter Parker the real person, or is Spider-Man the real person? Just because these are the characters wearing the masks doesn't mean that they're the personas. Okay? Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent, I would argue, are personas. Bruce Wayne isn't actually like that as a human being. Clark Kent isn't actually a bumbling idiot as a human being. These are personas that they put on to protect their real identities. Whereas Laurel Lance and Peter Parker are very much themselves in their day to day life, and then they put on a mask simply to hide that identity and allow them to go out and fight crime. So that would be our personas. Is this relevant to anything that we're going to do in media, this specificity? No. But now you know, you lucky people, you. So when we're looking at superhero movies, personas are really obviously important, and it's something that you can talk about in terms of narrative and analysis, and we'll wind up looking at that. Representation, therefore, is linking it all back. Representation is hugely important. If you do not represent these characters as suitably different, all right, then the audience will be confused. Okay, if you had Bruce Wayne going out in the bat suit, just like, "Hi, I'm Bruce Wayne, but this is my Batman costume," everyone would be like, "No, you're clearly Batman as well." You have to have two clearly, distinctly different characters, and representation is crucial there. It's not just about changing the way that you look. Bruce Wayne as Batman, well, Batman is kind of deep voiced, scary, beat people up, criminal, battly. Yes, battly is a word. It's not. And Bruce Wayne's this kind of reckless, childish, um, billionaire playboy who's never really grown up. The represented is very different. It's not just the costumes that they wear. Okay. You probably, I don't know if you have or not, people often have issues with Clark Kent and Superman because Clark Kent and Superman look like the same person. He doesn't wear a mask, and people like, surely you'd recognise him. It's quite an interesting thing. When Christopher Reeves, who played Superman, was filming on the set of the movie, he used to go on break and he'd head to like cafes and restaurants on break. And depending on when he was on break, sometimes he'd be in his Superman costume and sometimes he'd be in his Clark Kent costume. When he was in his Superman costume, everyone recognised him as Christopher Reeves, who had played Superman before, and he was mobbed for autographs and things like that. When he went in his Clark Kent costume, people ignored him. He was just another guy in the street. One or two people might recognize him, but on the most part, people ignored him. So the costume actually clearly does work, especially if, and that was without him embodying the differences between these two characters, i.e., Superman's supreme confidence and very self assured, compared to Clark Kent, bumbling, clumsy, kind of uncertain. So, representation very important. Representation in Moana very important. If we start thinking about Maui, which is what we will do next lesson, um, you can have a think about how he is represented when we first meet him versus how we come to understand the reality of his character as the movie goes on. If you have time, there's going to be a person and a persona on the following slide. I want you to do two things. The first thing is I want you to tell me who is the real person here and which is the mask. And I want you to note three differences between them both. Okay. Once you've done that, you can have a think about how and why. No, sorry, you can think about why the character's been represented in these different ways. So, who's the real person and which is the persona? Okay, which one of these is really kind of this character's true nature? Is it Clark Kent or is it Superman? That's the first thing I want you to do. Three differences between them. That's the second thing I want you to do. And then why are these differences included? And we will talk about this on Friday. This should, I'd imagine, run you into the end of the lesson. I will bigify that, don't worry, I'm just checking the time. Yeah, I've been talking for ages. You're probably already gone. You're never even going to see this. Yeah, if you could do that, and we'll chat about that on Friday, and then we'll move on. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much to whoever is looking after the class. I really appreciate that. And I hope you all have a lovely day. See you hopefully on Friday.